Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Arlington ISD Board of Trustees on May 16th, 2024, beginning at 5:02. Members of the public may access this meeting via AISD website at www.aisd.net. One or more trustees may participate in this meeting via video conference call. A quorum of the Board of Trustees will be physically present at the Administration Building. First on our agenda is the swearing in of our school board trustees, and presiding over that swearing in are Honorable Judge Carrie Walker and Honorable Judge Patricia Baca Bennett. We will swear in by place. First up is Sarah McMurrow in place 1. Presiding over Ms. McMurrow's swearing in is the Honorable Judge Carrie Walker. Judge Walker and Ms. McMurrow, please step forward to the podium.
How are you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, absolutely. All right, if I could get you to raise your right hand to take the oath and repeat after me,
Yes,
and
sir.
I'll go slow, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, in the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Sarah McMurrow,
I, Sarah McMurrow,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of trustee,
of the office of trustee,
place 1,
place 1,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
All
Judge
right.
Walker.
And also have to present to you the official certificate signed by the school board president that you were duly reelected to Arlington Independent School District trustee in place 1, and it is suitable for framing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. Can I make some remarks, Madam President? I just want to say thank you. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to our community for coming out at the polls and putting your trust in me yet again so that I can serve another term. I am very excited, and I want to introduce friends and family who came out tonight. This is very special to me, even though this is my second term. I feel like, in a sense, this is my first real swearing in, because my first term 3 years ago, it was COVID social distancing time, so we had very limited attendees. So I want to introduce my family. There's my husband, Chris. He's amazing. I couldn't do this without him. And my sons, Danny and Henry, right there supporting me. And my in-laws, Joe McMurrow and Karen McMurrow, who taught here in Arlington ISD the whole time Vita Knox Elementary was Vita Knox Elementary. Very happy to see her here. Thank you for coming, my friends Lindsay, Kristen, Corey, and Michelle. They're all amazing educators that I'm proud to know and work alongside. And I'm seeing who else I'm missing. There's some people who if I'm missing you, I'm so sorry. I'm just looking around to see y'all are all peppered around. I'm very excited about this next 3 years, and I'm really especially thankful to you, Dr. Smith. You've been a wonderful addition to Arlington ISD. I'm just as proud as the past 3 years as I am excited about the future. We're on a really wonderful trajectory here in Arlington ISD, and we have the best students and staff. And my philosophy as a trustee is that in order to support our students and make sure that they can realize their dreams, we can only do so if we support our educators here. And so that's something that I will continue to bring to the board, and I want to thank each of you for being here tonight. Thank you.
All right, Sarah, let's see. I guess you need to sign that
Yes,
right
sir.
there. Right.
you.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I keep this, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Next in place 2 is myself, Melody Fowler. And Judge Walker, I'll join you at the podium.
All right, Ms. Fowler, if I could get you to raise your right hand, take the oath of office.
Yes, sir.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Melody Fowler,
I, Melody Fowler,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of trustee,
of the office of trustee,
Place 2,
Place 2,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
All right,
you, sir.
congratulations.
I just want to say thank you to my board members and to all the community for your trust in me to bring me back for another 3 years. I absolutely love serving this district, its teachers, and the students, and I thank you for your trust in me and allowing me to serve 3 more years. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Once upon a time, I used to have a decent signature.
I never have.
Did you want these?
And I want to say thank you to my husband, Larry. Where'd he go? Oh, he's over here. He moved. My husband, Larry, my son, Brennan, his fiancee, Lindsay, my best friend, Stacy, Lori and Danny, the Reeves, Sheila, so many people that are here. Dawn, thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I will continue to work hard for you all. Thank you so much. Lastly, but not least, is the swearing in of our newly elected trustee, Mr. Larry Mike, in place 3. Presiding over Mr. Mike's swearing in is the Honorable Judge Patricia Baca Bennett. Judge Bennett and Mr. Mike, please step forward to the podium.
Raise your right hand. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Larry Mike, do solemnly swear
I, Larry Mike, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of trustee, place 3,
of the office of trustee, place 3,
Arlington Independent School District
Arlington Independent School District
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my abilities preserve,
and to the best of my abilities preserve,
protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States
protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God. My stomach has been in knots since the election, so I think I'll finally get some good sleep tonight. I just want to thank everyone who supported me. Campaign manager, she is amazing. in her strategy and how we did things. Even in the times where running in a campaign, you kind of you get in your head and you're constantly on social media checking. And she kept me on the right path to just focus on our goals. My wife is here. Thank you for allowing me to run. Just thank you so much. My mom and my brother, they're watching online, so thank you so much. To everyone who supported me, I just thank you. Now the hard work begins. We have a bunch of lives in our hands. Our future is in AISD, and these children are relying on the right decisions that we make. We have our dream makers who are our teachers that we need to ensure that we take care of. And the number one thing is to ensure that public education is fully funded, and I will continue to say that over and over again. It is essential that we ensure that our education system is as good as it can be because our future relies on our children. So I will do my best. And to my future colleagues, or now colleagues, I'm ready to work. So thank you.
While Larry's signing, I looked over and I forgot to say thank you to my nephew who is here. Thank you, Dixon. To our judges, I would like to thank you both for coming here today to swear in our re-elected and newly elected trustee, Sarah McMurrah, Larry Mike, and myself. We have such a great opportunity in Arlington to elect individuals that the citizens believe will represent them in making decisions that impact the lives of our precious children. And now, I believe State Rep David Cook is here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the opportunity to be before the board. And I actually want to make up for last year. We were in session in 2023, so I brought resolutions for Trustee Haynes and Trustee Richardson as well. And so if I may, I'd just like to pass those out at this time and just express my appreciation for the jobs that y'all do. And it's what's already been stated here today is that it's very important, the job that you have, and you know the lives that are in your hands. And I just want to say that I look forward to partnering with you and representing Arlington ISD. And please call on me as the session will be here before we know it. So again, want to wish you all the best and just say thank you for your service. And if I may, I guess I'll have two spots next year. I think I'll be fully caught up with Mr. Wilbanks and Mr. Chaffos on the election. So if I may pass those out, I'd be.
Thank you, Representative David Cook, for being here. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your effort. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We will now take about a 10-minute recess so we can visit with people and get pictures if we want to, and then we'll resume from there.
That was quick.
Now the Board of Trustees on May 16th, 2024, beginning at 5:33, will convene in closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 through 551.084 and 551.089 of the Texas Government Code in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Acts for the topic set forth on our agenda. We will reconvene into open session at approximately 6:45. At this time, I will reconvene into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for May 16th, 2024, beginning at 7:09. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Our board meetings are open to the public, and we welcome everyone, and we thank you for participating in public education. While our meetings are open to the public, this is a meeting and we have business to conduct. Disruptions will not be permitted. Anyone who disrupts the meeting or speaks when others are speaking may be asked to leave or may be escorted out. We welcome civic input, but we insist that we remain respectful and civil. Thank you for your cooperation. We will start our opening ceremony. Please join Mr. Wilbanks in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. Please silence all cell phones and electronic devices to avoid disruptions to those around you. And now, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. One of the items which preceded this part of the meeting was the swearing in of our re-elected and newly elected trustees, Sarah McMurrough, Larry Mike, and myself, Melody Fowler. Congratulations to Larry Mike and Sarah McMurrough for your election. Now we're going to do the vote. I would like to make the nomination for president for Mr. Justin Chapa to serve as president of the Board of Trustees. Do I have a second?
I second.
A second for Mr. Wilbanks. We'll do roll call vote, please, starting with Mr. Larry Mike. You just raise your hands.
Aye.
Thank you.
Brooklyn Richardson, aye.
Sarah McMurrow, yes.
Melody Fowler, yes.
Leanne Haynes, I vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
The vote is unanimous. We now have a new president, Mr. Justin Chapa. There you go, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. And thank you to my colleagues for putting your trust in me for this position, and I hope to live up to your expectations. At this time, the next order of business is the selection of our vice president and secretary for the next term. It is our tradition that these are nominated by slate. Do I have a motion for secretary and vice president?
President Chapa?
Yes, Ms. Fowler. Ms. Fowler has a motion.
Yes, I'll make the motion to, we select Sarah McMurrough as our vice president, and I make the motion that we accept Ms. Brooklyn Richardson as our secretary.
We have a motion for Ms. McMurrough as vice president and Ms. Richardson for secretary. I heard a second from Mr. Wilbanks. For Mr. Mike, who would like the honors?
I second.
We'll give it to Mr. Mike. Second by Mr. Mike. We'll now start with a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Mike.
Larry Mike, yes.
Brooklyn Richardson, yes.
Sarah McMurrow, I vote yes.
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Leanne Haynes, I vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes. The vote is unanimous. Congratulations to Vice President McMurrow and Secretary Richardson. And we will now take, as our custom, a 10-minute recess for our staff to rearrange the dais. Okay, thank you to our staff for getting us in order, and thank you all for your patience in allowing us to do our annual board reorganization. We do not have an opening ceremony on our agenda tonight. We'll therefore move on to our open forum for agenda items. Ms. Forsberg, do we have any speakers registered for open forum?
We have no speakers registered for this open forum. For non-agenda items, we have 3 registered.
Okay, in that case, thank you, Ms. Forsberg. We will next move on to, we have already organized the Board of Trustees. We'll move on to administrative ratification and appointments. Dr. Smith.
It seems like with that pause, I would have been ready to read already, but I apologize. President Chapa, congratulations on your appointment as president of the board, and Ms. McMurrow and Ms. Richardson, congratulations as well. Tonight, I would like to recommend that the board ratify the appointment of the individuals that we have discussed in closed session.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
We have a motion from Ms. McMurrow. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Fowler. Trustees, the voting screen should be coming up. Please vote. Oh, it's not up, sorry. I need to learn to look at this screen. All trustees vote in the affirmative. The motion carries. Dr. Smith.
Excellent. So is the fun time now that some of you have been waiting for tonight. As I call your name, please stand. I'm going to read a little bit of a bio about you, and we want to give you a warm welcome to the administrative ranks in Arlington ISD. First, Ms. Veronica Dixon, Assistant Principal at Blanton Elementary. Yes. Veronica is joining us from Grand Prairie ISD as an assistant principal. She's served in Irving ISD and Henderson ISD as well. From a third grade teacher to an instructional specialist to an assistant principal, we are glad that Veronica is joining us. Please give her one more round of applause. And next for Crouch Elementary, Lucy Cerna. Lucy has been in Arlington ISD throughout her career from 2009 to the present in various positions, such as 6th grade language arts and social studies teacher, a bilingual math teacher, dean of instruction and testing facilitator. She also has a bachelor's degree from UTA and a master's degree from UTA. Please, again, welcome Lucy. And next, for Duff Elementary, we have Kelly Burns, the new assistant principal. Ms. Kelly Burns has been a teacher in Arlington ISD as well, special education teacher, 2nd grade teacher, 1st grade teacher. She has a bachelor's degree from Texas A&M University and a master's degree from UTA. Welcome, Kelly. And finally, we have Kristen Harmon, assistant principal at Little Elementary. Ms. Harmon most recently served as an instructional coach at Bailey Junior High and has taught social studies in our district for the last few years. She has a bachelor's degree from Texas Christian University and a master's from UTA as well. Please, again, welcome Kristen. Trustees, you all know the importance of the role of our assistant principals in our system. We're grateful that we have outstanding candidates here before you today that are stepping into these roles, and we're thankful and excited to see what they're going to do for the future. Again, one more round of applause for all of our new assistant principals.
Congratulations to our new appointees. I'll take this time to open an invitation for y'all to leave if you would like, or you can stick around for our riveting discussion on our agenda items. I believe there is a area set up outside that you can take pictures and celebrate if you'd like. Thank you all for coming down. Okay, as folks are filing out, we will move on with our agenda items for tonight. The next item on our agenda is a discussion action item on considering the 2024-2025 Student Code of Conduct. Dr. Smith.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to invite Dr. Michael Hill up tonight. He's going to walk you through a very brief presentation about our Student Code of Conduct. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, President Chapa, and members of the board. Again, we're here to talk about the 24-25 Student Code of Conduct, and it's we've kind of gotten this thing down to a science now where there's not many major changes to be made. But the purpose, again, is to present you with the recommended revisions to the Code of Conduct prior to the end of this school year that will go in effect for the next school year. And again, this whole process, we look through the lens of policy AE local, which reads that the board believes that the school environment impacts the achievement that the students are actually working toward every day. So the process is campus administration, central administrators, teachers, parents, and students met throughout the spring a few times to review proposed changes to the Code of Conduct. This current Student Code of Conduct has been reviewed by different departments as well for different changes and recommendations. In general, again, there's not really much major change that we're recommending, but some of the changes, revisions, further explains the parent and guardian responsibilities to include parents helping students maintain a positive relationship and really kind of focus on that respect and decreasing violence throughout the classroom. The committee was really interested in trying to put not really more teeth in it, but a little bit more substance behind that expectation. And clarifying why student discipline for two students may be different who are involved in the same incident. Again, with progressive discipline, one student could be at incident number 4 or 5, and one could be at his first one, and that could lead to different consequences. Some departmental name changes, such as technology support being changed to IT district support department. Again, that's what the technology department has done, and so we want to make that change throughout, as well as the parent community engagement to engagement, equity, and access, making that change throughout the document. Update the procedures for students' use of district technology, that is either lost, stolen, or damaged, to make clarification of what the district's expectation is for those devices. Provide administrators with flexibility in administering student discipline for technology violations because of the increased use in technology. Wanted to provide a little more flexibility for administrators to remove some of the shalls and replace those with mays. Revision to sections formerly known as SEL department to align with the guidance and counseling and related services. Again, the review process is included central administration. The board governance committee has looked at this as well. And we will continue to look for maybe small grammatical corrections or more fluency in the document as we present it for final approval. But again, tonight we recommend the board approve it as it's presented, with the only option that there may be some grammatical errors that we're still searching for. So.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Trustees, are there questions or comments? I see Mr. Wilbanks has requested to speak. Mr. Wilbanks.
Thank you, President Chapa. First time saying it. No, and thank you, Dr. Hill. When you presented this to governance, everything looked good. It's pretty routine and much needed. One of the things I requested is looking at item number 2, where it was a list of things that we encourage parents to get involved in their kids' education. The requested language on that bullet was pretty awkward, or looked like it could use some improvement. And one of the requests I asked is looking at taking the part starting with email or request a conference with your child's teacher. I think that's in a very important way a parent could get involved with their child's education and deserves to be a bullet of its own. I think where it is, it's trying to put too much into one bullet, and the importance of that step, I think, is deserving of its own bullet. So with that, if there's not any other discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I would like to make it with that one amendment.
Sure.
With that one change included, so.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Wilbanks to adopt the Student Code of Conduct as it has been presented and as Mr. Wilbanks has just explained in amendment. Is there a second? Second. I have a second from Ms. Fowler. And we will proceed to vote. Trustees approve unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
All right, thank you all.
We will now move on to our discussion reports section of the agenda. And before we move on, I'd like to thank the Governance Committee for its review of the Student Code of Conduct. I know that is a long document to review, having done it many times before. Our Governance Committee is chaired by Vice President McMurrow and Mr. Wilbanks and Ms. Haynes, so thank you for your hard work on that. We're now moving on to discussion reports, item A. Item A is a discussion regarding the 2024-2025 preliminary budget. Dr. Hill.
That would be Dr. Smith. That's
Dr.
okay.
Smith.
I like Dr. Hill as well. I'd like to invite our CFO, Darla Moss, up to give us an update on the budget process. As you all know, we're in the thick of budget planning, and we will be coming to you in June for final budget approval. So this update's an extremely important one for us at this time. Darla.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, President Chapa, trustees. Again, today, this is one of the routine things that we do annually, and actually the purpose or the main goal of this presentation tonight is to just update you on where we are in the budget development process for the 24-25 budget. I'd like to start, though, just by letting you know where we are, just a high-level overview of the 2024 budget right now. And if you'll look at your slide there, the total revenues that we're looking at for now is $566 million. We're looking at total expenditures of $576.3. So as of right now, we're looking at a $10.3 million deficit. If you'll recall, when you adopted the budget back in June, we adopted that budget at a $5.5 million deficit, and right now we're looking at 10.3. We have made some adjustments. We've done some amendments to that budget throughout the year, and that's where we're settling on. We still have a lot of expenditures out there to do through June 30th, so that number is subject to change, and likely it will change to the positive, not to a positive amount, but that deficit will grow smaller. And so next, the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2025. We started this work back in October. We did a budget workshop with senior level staff. We've worked with other departments in the district campuses in trying to pull this together. The main goal, of course, is to align our resources with student success. So we look at our revenue and start to see where that is and start to estimate some of those numbers. The big part of revenue always starts with student enrollment. That's how we're funded. Actually, we're funded by average daily attendance. So we look at our enrollment and we calculate what we think we might land on attendance by the end of the year, and we come up with that average daily attendance number. And you can see for the last several years that enrollment has been declining. We've made you aware of that for the last several years, and then our demographer has come and spoken to the board as well to look at that declining student enrollment. We take that 53,551 and we plug it into a revenue template based on our average daily attendance, and that's what we come up with, a big portion of the revenue that we're going to share out with you tonight. The other large portion of revenue comes in the form of our property values. If you'll look at our tax collections or our estimated values for 2024, it's $44.2 million. That's just slightly higher than our April 2023 estimates, just a slight decrease compared to April 2023. More than likely, that's a result of the homestead exemption that we had last year. This is just another chart, another way of looking at those property values. Just wanted to point out a couple of things here. It shows the historical value and also the impact of that on our funding. If you look at fiscal year 2020, or tax year 2020, that's when we had our VAT-RE. So a very slight percent change in taxable value, but the dollars were there. And we also had some compression in that same year. So that's why you see we went from 297 to 345. A lot of that was a result of the VAT-RE, but we also had compression in that year as well. For the 2022 tax year, I want to point out we had a 10% increase, but the funding only slightly increased again because of that homestead exemption of $40,000 that year. If you'll look at the 2023 tax year, we had a 3% increase, but we also had a $100,000 homestead exemption as well. So that's how it actually impacts our funding for the year. So once we determine what our revenue will land at, we start to look at our expenditures. And we shared out with the board last June when we adopted the budget where we were, what kind of a deficit we were working with. We also told the board that we had work to do, and we've been doing some of that, looking at cost-saving measures. And when we do that, I wanted to make sure that we noted that we have to look at what our educational quality is and look at our staffing when we make those decisions. There are things that we've done on a regular basis, our energy efficiency initiatives that we've had, our energy management systems. We also have done a study on transportation efficiency. We're working on that right now as well. Technology integration, whatever we can look at to say, okay, it's going to help our productivity, it's going to have some cost savings as well. And then we're doing a strategic work on our staffing optimization as well going forward. During that work, we also look to the community, we look to staff. Sometimes we think that the budget is built just on finance department alone, but we reach out to others in this process. It's a cumbersome process that started back in October with a budget workshop with senior leadership in the district. And we actually looked at ways of enhancing our revenue, ways of reducing our expenditures. We talked about what we needed to start, what we needed to stop doing, and we gathered input from our team, district level team. We also have two community committees. We have the CBOC that work very closely with finance and facilities on our bond program. We have the almost $1 billion bond that we're working on 2019, and we look forward to having their input on that. We have several meetings throughout the year where they have input. Again, we also have a Financial Futures Committee. I think they reported to the board last month on what work that they are doing. We keep them engaged in the budget process. We also have them share their feedback on the budget as well. During all that work, we land on budget priorities. We shared these out with the board last month. I won't go over them. But again, I will say the goal in these priorities as well is to align the resources with our student success. The budget does not come without challenges, and so we try to look at some of these and what we can do. We know that inflation over the last several years has reached upwards of 19%. Again, I mentioned earlier that our enrollment and our attendance, enrollment's declining. We've looked at attendance. We've struggled a little bit since COVID, but we've made some progress on that attendance number as well. As long as enrollment is decreasing, we can count on a decrease in funding. Our property insurance has increased as well. Transportation costs are increasing due to inflation. And the big one for me is there's uncertainty in whether we're going to have a future funding increase or not. So we're building this budget based on what we have right now and not actually counting on that for the next year. And so some of the assumptions that we make when we build the budget and run the numbers through the revenue template or our average daily attendance. We take the foundation of enrollment, and then our team calculates where we think we might land based on historical information that we have. So that's where we land on our average daily attendance. That's what we're funded by. Our taxable values, I said earlier, are $44 billion for 24-25. That is the estimate that we received in April. That number will change. We'll get our certified values in July. And if you look at, I think in the past we've told you that that's really not the final number. We get another value number in October. We get preliminary T2 values in January. And then in August, after the fiscal year has ended, that's when we get our final number that we're funded on. Our M&O tax rate, it will be further compressed for this year. Our student enrollment, again, is 53,551. And we've worked diligently with HR over the past couple of years in trying to determine what our staffing looks like so that we can report that out to you. In the past, that's what has caused that swing. We really hadn't been saying, okay, well, what are our vacancies? Our vacancies have actually been what has caused the swing, and we actually utilize that in this current 2024 year budget to say, what are our payroll savings and how can we balance this budget if we know that we're not going to be 100% filled? And so when we make those assumptions, there's always risk involved. That's why our number, we continue to amend the budget throughout the year. So when you look at enrollment and attendance, again, we won't know our actual enrollment until the students return in August. Our enrollment has been declining, so we have to look at that. That's always a risk. Our attendance rate may vary throughout the year, and that could result in lower state funding. Our taxable values, just mentioned, the timing of that. Tax rate compression over the last 3 or 4 years. Our taxable values are not finalized until October and for M&O collection purposes. And then our T2 values, again, as I stated earlier, are based on fall 2024 values. When we look at staffing, again, that position fill rate could be higher than in previous years. We know that with the ESSER funding or the loss of ESSER funding, some of those positions will move over into the general operating budget, and so we'll have to look at that very closely. And then our campus and department budgets, they're just unforeseen things that may come up throughout the year. And those factors may arise. Also, the unspent funds, we look at that as well to adjust the budget and come to the board with amendments when we need to. So some of the considerations when we were looking at expenditures this year, we've worked with staffing ratio adjustments, and that created a $9 million adjustment. Department budgets, we reduced that by $3 million for the 24-25 fiscal year. And then our ESSER positions, we added $2 million. New positions were $300,000. And then insurance premiums went up $2.7 million for this year. And then our safety and security expenditures were $4 million. That's part of the unfunded mandate that we had that was required of us last year. And so this is what our preliminary budget looks like. If you look at our revenues, they total $550.9 million, and our expenditures are $629.8 million. That results in a deficit of $78.9 million. So that's where we start. And we've talked about our ESSER funds. ESSER goes away September 2024. What we're recommending is where we were going to supplant ESSER funds in 2024, we now supplant those in 2025 to help us one more year with the deficit budget that we're facing. So that $10 million would then be supplanted in fiscal year 2025. We have the option of July through September 30th to do that. We've reached out to the auditors. They have given us the okay on doing that as well. So that will help in reducing next year's deficit. The other item that I have here is $40 million that we can transfer from capital outlay. It's local capital outlay. It's not any part of our bond program. So if you'll recall, I think it was in 2022, we had excess in our general operating fund as a result of COVID when our operations were, when we were remote. We had savings in electricity and other costs, so that year we had a significant surplus. And my recommendation was to move some of those dollars over into capital outlay because we knew that the bond work might become more expensive for us. So I've talked with Mr. Horn and Facility Services, and they have stated that it looks like we won't need that money. My recommendation is to use a portion of that to assist in the 2025 budget deficit. So that leaves us with a $28.9 million deficit. Those are both one-time fixes, so just want to make sure that we're aware of that. Similar to what we did this current year, the ESSER supplant, the payroll savings, it was a one-time fix just for 1 year. So again, we still have some work to do and identify some things. This slide just shows all of the funds that the board is required to approve. Right now, the general operating, again, is 28.9 deficit. The debt services fund is balanced, and we balanced that in the past several years. You know, we've done refunding, we've done defeasances to help in savings on interest. We're actually about to do one this year again that will save us about $8 million in the debt services fund. So we're always looking for ways to reduce our debt on the debt service fund. Our capital projects, again, we've sold quite a few bonds. That $344 million deficit is actually misleading. It just shows the money that we've already had. We don't get the revenue in, we've already received it. So for this year, we're just showing actually the expenditures on it. And then child nutrition, we're looking at a 29, just a slight surplus in the child nutrition fund. And so our next steps and timeline, June 6th is when we typically would need to authorize the advertisement for the notice of public meeting. On June the 18th, we would have that public meeting. That's what we're looking at for right now. July 25th, we receive our certified taxable values, and we would know again, you know, make those adjustments for that. And then in August, maximum compressed tax rate will be determined by the Texas Education Agency, and we'll know whether or not our forecasts are coming in line or not. The tax rate will not need to be adopted until September 30th. That's the deadline for the tax rate adoption. So those are the things that the board are required to do, and the budget is required to be adopted by June 30th. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Dr. Smith would like to say something.
Yeah, if I may, we had a trustee request earlier today for an additional slide that was added to this, and I don't know if it made it back to Frank and stuff. So Diane, would you work with Frank and everybody to make sure we have that additional slide so we can add that to the discussion as well? There was a request for a slide just on fund balance.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Trustees, are there comments or questions? This is a discussion item. I have Ms. McMurrow, Vice President McMurrow.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Very quickly, just a couple remarks. I always appreciate you from the very beginning, because we know all summer, as you just showed us in the timeline, it's going to be budget discussions and adoption. I appreciate you giving us the most conservative projection. As you mentioned, the pendulum often swings back, and so I just want to say again for the record, the reiteration that this is indeed a projection. I just want to challenge our board, our superintendent, when we look at those projections of other things like projected attendance for the next 5 years, projected student enrollment for the next 5 years based on demographers and all of that. I challenge us as a team to not resign ourselves to those projections. I do believe that we are capable of improving student enrollment. I do believe that we are capable, and our campus staff and families are capable of partnering with us in improving student attendance. I think that it's going to take some real intentionality on our part and some innovative thinking, but I'm looking forward to a budget workshop that we're going to have with you soon this summer, Ms. Moss, so that we can start having those conversations. And you mentioned it, and we will see that additional slide here in a minute, but it's very important that also that we continue to communicate with our local delegation, because you did mention the unfunded mandates that really hit us this year. We want to, for example, having an armed guard at every campus. That is not a choice. That is an unfunded mandate for our 75 campuses. We like it a lot because it increases, it's another layer of safety, but that comes out of our pocket. And so it's so important that we keep that dialogue going with our representatives, our senators, so that next session, we can get the state to release those much needed funds. I'm following other school districts of our size and larger, and it is rare now that you hear of a district of our size adopting a budget now that is not a deficit. So again, I appreciate that you're not wavering in your approach and the amazing work of your team. Thank you for giving us the most conservative projection. And as a team here, we have a lot of work to do and a lot of conversations to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President McMurrow. Dr. Smith?
I do want to make sure that I clarify with Darla, just so the board knows this and we're clear about this, because Trustee McMurrow brought up most conservative. What you presented here today does not include any kind of pay increase, and it also does not include any kind of savings from vacancies and stuff. The foundation of this is a draft discussion, and I think it's important to point out to all audience members as well. This is a draft discussion, so our board knows where we currently stand in the planning process. This is not a finalized budget right now. The next step in this, it comes in the following presentation when we talk about compensation package. So I didn't want anybody to misunderstand any of this right now. I wanted to be clear. What you see in front of you includes no pay raises at this time. What you're getting next are different compensation options for the board to consider prior to your finalized budget adoption in June.
And if I could just add, the payroll savings piece of it, the reason we're not bringing that forward again is we had some ESSER positions that are being closed, and we're anticipating, we've worked with HR to see what they thought those payroll savings would be, and we are anticipating some of those positions being filled, a lot more than we had on the table for last year. So that's why we're not putting that in there. It's not to say we're going to be 100%, have 100% fill rate next year, but it's I wouldn't want to put that in the budget right now because of the unknowns. Did we get that slide?
Yes.
Oh.
It should be slide 16 in the handouts.
And I apologize to Frank. He got several different versions of the presentation today. Okay, awesome. So we wanted to look at our general operating fund. I think this was the slide here that was, let me go to the previous one. Yes, I wanted to show you where we landed as far as the deficit, and then take a look at our fund balance so that we could understand where we are in regards to the fund balance. So I went back 4 years here, plus the actual current year, what we're estimating to end at. And in 2019-20, we had a $222 million fund balance. Again, I want to put that disclaimer out there of what fund balance is what our dollar amount is at one point in time when the auditors do their work, and is as of June 30th. There are a lot of items that are included in there. We have unassigned fund balance, which typically is what we look at, and that's what our policy states, that we want to make sure that we have 16.67% at least in our unassigned fund balance. It also includes like our universal pre-K. When we set those funds aside, that's part of our fund balance. So this is not money that we can actually spend. Some of it actually is accruals, accounts payable accruals, bills that we still haven't paid that comes out of this money. But that's what it looks like at one point in time on the last day of the fiscal year. The other thing that's included, again, is we have reimbursements that we get from the state on our federal funds. We have to make sure that we have fund balance in there to cover those, to make sure that we make our payroll. There's a window when we don't receive funds from the state. Our tax collections don't come in until January, so we have to have fund balance to make our payrolls for the last half of the month until we start to get tax revenue and revenue from the state in. If you'll look from 2021 to 2022 is where we had that increase in fund balance of $52 million, and then we moved that out to capital outlay. And based on what we're forecasting to end 2024 in, it looks like it will be $258 million in our fund balance at the end of this year. That's a really a big estimate. So.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moss, for reviewing that slide. I have Mr. Wilbanks next on the speaking list.
Thank you, President Chopin, and thank you, Ms. Moss. I do want to echo my colleague, Ms. McMurrow's comments about the need to work with our local delegation. We are not alone, as she mentioned. Most districts across the state have already been dipping into fund balance and are in much dire position than we are. So number one, I want to commend you that, and I also want to commend the taxpayers of Arlington for passing the VATAR back in 2019, which has allowed us to operate and pay competitively and attract the best teachers and staff in the area in a highly competitive market. We've seen record inflation, and we're feeling the effects of that inflation. And for the first time, looking at, if you go back to the budget slide before applying the $40 million, $68 million, $915. I've gone back over the years since I've been a trustee and looked. We've always adopted, when did you arrive, Ms. Moss, refresh my memory?
In 2020.
In 2020.
Yes.
I started in 2019, a year before you. And do you recall ever adopting a positive budget?
I think our goal was to adopt a balanced budget, and that's what we did on last year. However, I made sure that we were aware that it was actually a deficit budget, but we had federal funds to cover that deficit with, and we had payroll savings to cover that deficit with as well.
But it was still slightly negative, but very, very lightly so.
Yes.
So since I've been, and before that, President Chopin and I always talk about how when we first got involved in the district back in 2011, we've always adopted a negative a deficit budget. But the reason for that is numerous. You alluded to it. We have to make assumptions. We don't know what our attendance rate's going to be until we get there. That's the big driver. And we are seeing a decline. I'm sanguine as well that we can move that back up, but what we're seeing in terms of attendance across the state is there's a birth rate decline, that there's not enough kids being born to come in kindergarten and first grade to replace the kids that we have. So that is not alone. We're not the only ones experiencing a decline. The state average of enrollment is going down, and that's just a demographic trend, correct?
Correct.
And we're probably in line with the decline we're seeing, I believe, if I recall the demographer's report. We are getting, the other issue is that we're getting a lot of competition, because if you're a charter school that want to appeal to the widest student body population, you want to put your charter school in the geographic center of the Metroplex, which unfortunately for us is Arlington. So we're continuing to see pressures. I think I'm all for competition, but we need to, there's a point when the market is too saturated. So that's another area of concern. But the main thing I want to point out is that when you look at, from the time I got on the board, we've adopted a negative, our June 30th adopted budget was negative 36 million. In 2019, it was negative 38 million, my first year on the board. Negative 18. And if you look, those have always been around 6%. You know, the deficit that we adopt tends to be around 6% of the total budget, under 10%. And again, as Ms. McMurrow pointed out, we applaud you for taking a bunch of unknowns, all the major drivers, attendance, the tax rate, the taxable values. You have nothing in stone when we have to, by law, adopt our budget. So you've got to make a best guess, and it's better to err on the side of caution. And I commend you. And so when people see these deficit budgets, it's important to realize that in that same period of time, we've never ended up negative. We've always ended up positive. In fact, the $40 million you have on this screen, we, in 2 years' time, added over $70 million into our fund balance from running surpluses the prior 2 years. And so we were able to, given the inflation we were seeing on our bonds, move that $70 million out of fund balance to apply to those critical bond programs and construction projects that needed that extra money for completion because of that inflation. Now we're looking at moving about $40 million back. And I think the important number, as you pointed out, Dr. Smith, is we're sitting at 68.915. And that 68.915, when you look at the percentage of the overall budget, is over 10%. Before, the maximum was 7%. And we haven't even added raises. And there's, you know, that's not an option given the competitive environment we're in to not give a raise. So we're getting past, yes, we've had swings in the past. We are fortunate that we're in a healthy fund balance, but it is important to realize that this is not like those previous 6 years I've been on the board. Our ability to come back from a deficit this big, even with those conservative investments, is going to be tough. And so I'm a long-winded way of saying Ms. McMurrow was right. We've got to lobby our local delegation. We're not alone. Everyone else is in a lot of cases a lot worse shape than we are. But we've got to we've had 20% roughly inflation in salaries and expenditures in school districts across the state since the last time the basic allotment was raised in 2019. The basic allotment has stayed the same. We're all at a breaking point. The legislature is sitting on money that was allocated for teacher raises and wasn't passed the last session. So we're in dire straits. We're not alone. We need the legislature to hold true on their promise. So I'm confident they will, and I I guess the bottom line for me, I'll shut up now and let my other colleagues speak, but this does look bleak, but I'm hopeful for the future that we will right size, we'll look to cut and ensure that we yet again end up in the positive or close to it. But we may have to dip into fund balance, and I'm glad you put up the screen of our fund balance. We have a very healthy fund balance, do we not?
I would say we have a strong fund balance. With that said, I will also say that we have a 2019 bond, and we need to make sure that fund balance stays strong. We do have a couple of other bond sales that we have to do, and that impacts our bond rating. And it could impact it negatively if it goes down a large percent. I will say that in the past, we have had the swing. We've been working on that because my intent was to make sure the board knew what the budget was. And you can't know what the budget is if you have that big swing and you say, okay, we're going to put money back in the fund balance at the end of the year. That will not be the case this year unless we do some work. And there are things that we're going to have a budget workshop, and we'll talk about some things that we can do during the year to impact the 25 budget as well. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is not one of those swing years. It's what every district in the state of Texas is facing right now. These deficits, I've talked to other CFOs, they're in the same position that we are. We are fortunate that we had that money in local capital outlay to assist with this year. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that. The swing, I don't anticipate a swing this year. And you're right, we always put a buffer in the budget. You have to put a buffer in there because, again, last year, our enrollment, we anticipated a certain number and we were 800 short. But what our team does in finance is we look at that average daily attendance and we look at what historically it has done, and we adjusted it so that it didn't impact us as bad this year. So where we're looking at a $10 million deficit, we adopted a $5.5 million deficit. I would not be surprised if we didn't land right where we said we were going to land. And that's good work on the finance team. Carla and her team have done outstanding in putting this budget together this year.
Well, thank you. I know if we go to HB 100, that was going to promise to give teacher money set aside for teacher raises. It was only $5-6 billion, and that 20% inflation, if you apply it to the basic allotment, it's a lot more than $6 billion. So we've got some work to do with our local delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. Do any other trustees have questions or comments for Ms. Moss? Okay, seeing none, I have a couple questions, Ms. Moss.
Absolutely.
On this general operating fund balance slide, we are talking, we know sort of the history of how we got here with the capital outlay fund and whatnot, but is the 258 number here, does that include the amount that we put over in operating or capital projects, or is, in theory, right, we moved 53 to that. We also moved, we didn't come up tonight, but we moved 14 over there from what used to be the oil and gas fund. So there's $67 more million that we essentially designated for capital projects that we think could come back.
Absolutely.
So
It's not included in the 258. We have right at $70 million over in the local capital outlay.
Okay, so if we de-designated those, and it sounds like we can, then it would be, our fund balance would be closer to 325 million.
Yes,
Right.
if we transferred it back.
Okay, and I wanted to mention that because, and this has come up several times, but just to put even more of a point on it, we have been very conservative with how we've approached the changing school finance environment and the environment with inflation on our bond side. And the board was very, I think, had a lot of foresight 2 years ago where we capitalized on the fact that we had a large fund balance and surplus back then. And we said, we're going to make a contingency if inflation continues at that rate, because we made promises to folks in the 19 bond that we wanted to see through. And with the inflation as high as it is, we're not going to be able to do the 19 bond. to every, dotted I and crossed T the exact way that we projected in 19, because I don't think anybody could have seen that level of inflation coming. But it didn't stay where we thought it would, where it was, or maybe where it was going when we designated those funds 2 years ago. And so I'm glad to hear that we have those back, because our historic practice has been, Arlington has had a larger fund balance than many other districts for a long time. What's the minimum number of operating months that we need to maintain our bond ratings? Is it 2 or 3?
2.5.
And we've historically been closer to 6 or more?
We've had, I can't say it in months, but we run right around 40%.
So we've been very strategic about keeping this back there, because we want to be able, when situations like this happen, unusual situations like the state legislature authorizing $6 billion in funding for education, but then not actually passing an enabling statute to release it, because folks were throwing a temper tantrum over vouchers, which we don't have to get into here. But you generally don't see that happen. And you also don't see it happen at the same time as inflation being what it is, and also at the same time as a massive federal funding intervention going away. Not like we're running out of that money. There's a time limit on it, and it has to go away. And so I think it was particularly egregious of what the legislature did this year to hold us steady, no additional funding to speak of, authorizing the money, not allowing it to be spent, knowing that we have these issues coming, that districts are running a deficit, given the fact that all of these things are hitting at the same time. And it really is, in my mind, playing games, political games with us and with our staff over political objective that the state, some folks at the state have, but the people who are really going to suffer at the end of the day are the folks on the ground here. And that really is an improper use, I think. We don't play with people's livelihoods, and that's what is being done here, because some folks want vouchers. That being said, we see stories, as Mr. Wilbanks mentioned, of districts all around us. They have been running deficits for years. They don't have the fund balance that we do, and they don't have the runway that we do. So not only are they adopting a deficit budget, I think you've seen in the news that there are districts that are actually laying off staff. Not ESSER jobs are running out, but they are laying off staff. And we are very fortunate, and I'm very grateful to the prior iterations of this board that had the foresight to build this fund balance, so we have the opportunity here to not have to take drastic course corrections, but to use the money that we've put away to stabilize not just our finances, but our staffing, while we ride this out and see what the legislature is going to do next year. And so we do have a runway. And so I know that that's a number, no one likes seeing a $28 million deficit on there. As you've mentioned before, it's indicative of some structural things that we've got to do, and there's going to be a lot of hard work over the next year. And it's also, we're going to come back here, I think, in a few weeks, and we're going to be looking at a red number when we adopt a compensation plan. But we have the runway to adopt a compensation plan and still treat our employees right, and not be in the position of not being able to do what's right by our folks because we just don't have the money to do it. We do have the runway. And so I'm glad that this slide is here to show us that when we have the compensation discussion, that we are actually, although we're probably going to be adopting a deficit budget, we're in a pretty good place. And it's because we've been conservative for so many years and putting that money away for a time just like this. And so I just wanted to point that out, and that is a testament to not only the prior boards, I've said that a couple times, but it is to you and your staff and the historical work that our finance department has done to be able to put us in this type of position. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have to run the meeting now. I can't just shut up. Any other questions comments from trustees? Okay, with that, thank you, Ms. Moss.
Thank you.
We will move on to discussion report item B, compensation analysis and market review. Dr. Smith.
I'd like to invite Scott Kale up and Holly Stambaugh. They're going to walk you through some information. We also have a representative from TASB here, Keith McLemore, who can add on to any of their information as well. Again, purpose of the previous presentation was to provide the board initial draft of budget coming up for this upcoming year. And now Scott and Holly are here to tell you a little bit about possible compensation plans that we need to look at.
Good evening, President Chapa, board members, and Dr. Smith. Thank you for having us this evening. The compensation plan report this evening will encompass two parts. We're fortunate to have Keith McLemore with us from TASB. We work regularly on an annual basis with TASB to look at our compensation plan and our systems and make sure that we're in line with market and make adjustments as needed. And then Holly Stambaugh, our Director of Compensation and Benefits for the district, will take the information that Keith has shared with you and provide you with some alternatives for consideration in terms of how to use that data toward potential adjustments for next year's compensation and benefits. So with that, I'll introduce Keith McLemore from TASB.
Good evening, President Chapa, Superintendent Smith, and trustees. Third year I've worked with Arlington, and I'm a compensation HR consultant. And a lot of districts I work with are trying to get to market, but since I started working with y'all 3 years ago, y'all have always led the market and continue to want to be a leader with compensation. So kudos to y'all for making that happen. And hopefully I can work this without. There we go. So this year it was a pay system maintenance project, and the primary focus of this is to realign the pay structures to current market values and readjust pay or show how your pay comparisons are to market. And this is a slide that just shows the basic process. It's a 3-month process. Have a kickoff call with district leadership. We then get the employee data and pay plans, and we run a statewide survey of school districts to get the vast majority of our data points. But when I get the data, I look at how your people compare to the market values, and then realign the pay structures and provide estimates on cost models. This is the group of peer districts that we were asked to use, and we try to keep this as stable as possible. And as you can see, everyone participated in our survey, which is good. Sometimes we don't see all those X's, but we have really good survey participation in this area, and it's a really good group. We also utilize third-party data from 2 primary sources, Economic Research Institute and Comp Analyst. And the reason we bring that up is there are a lot of jobs, as you know, that they exist in the public sector, or the public school sector, as well as the private sector. I think an accountant, speech language pathologist, et cetera, mechanics. And so we do take an average of the private sector data with our survey data to provide both flavors, so you can be sure that you're competitive in both areas, both arenas. We'll talk about teachers first and then move into the other non-teaching groups. What you are looking at here is a pie chart showing the total experience for the teachers that were submitted as part of the data collection. Not a lot to really focus on here because it looks normal, which is a good thing. If I don't see anything out of the ordinary, it means it looks really good. But just to orient you a little bit, that blue pie slice at about 12 to 1 o'clock, that shows how the percentage of teachers with 0 years of experience, just 8% there. And normally that green slice, 6 to 10 years of experience, ends around 6 o'clock, 6:30 if this were a clock. So that just basically means usually districts have about half their teaching staff has less than 11 years of experience, and y'all fit pretty well in that scenario. So nothing out of the ordinary there. New hires, out of the 778 teachers and librarians reported at the data collection, at the point of data collection, you can see how the experience distribution is here, and as expected, a bigger pie slice there for those with 0 years, about 34%, but really good distribution, and the year, for those that had prior experience, nothing out of the ordinary here either. So let's talk about teachers and the market comparison. What you're looking at here is showing data points. What is done is your hiring schedule, principally 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20 years are compared to that peer group, and the blue shows the market values for and the orange shows Arlington's ISD's values. As you can see, in comfortable position ahead of market at all 5 surveyed benchmark years, and just ever since I've worked with y'all have done well leading the market and wanting to be really competitive here. So kudos. This is the data that drives the chart that you just saw. And Arlington's data is there at the first white row. Local market is that second white row. And the percent comparison is that third row. And you can see you're anywhere from 3% above market to 5% above market, which is in good shape. And a new data point here that wasn't shown earlier is the average salary in Arlington. That's that last column to the right. And the district is actually 6% above market there, which is fantastic. And you can see the dollar differences from market in that bottom row, which kind of helps put into perspective to see the dollar values. Always like to show these teacher add-on stipends where districts often find ways to add more money to attract folks in hard to staff areas. So you can see a master's degree isn't really, it's not a shortage area stipend, but everyone has that. But across all of these, what you'll see is Arlington ISD stipends lead the market, and the special education general resource, you can see $1,000 above market. Special education high needs, $500 above. Almost 500 above for bilingual, and about 200 above. Well, that's a double. I put that twice. Sorry about that. For that master's degree, general. So let's look at the non-teaching exempt market comparisons, and you'll see they have been divided just to kind of focus in on some principal areas: central administration, campus administration, professional, and information technology. You'll see that second column is how employee pay compares to market. The third column, how the pay grade midpoints compare to market. And out to the far right there, the number of jobs that were benchmarked. I like to point out that the pay grade midpoints are important because increases are calculated off of those. You want to be sure they are competitive, and also expect market shift. So we try to get the midpoints to at least 2% above market, if possible, because that absorbs that typical 2% market shift. Where next year your structure would be in line with market for these non-teaching pay ranges. But it's always good to be even stronger if possible. But if you'll notice that all the pay comparisons are at least 4% above market, anywhere from 4 to 7% above. So that's a nice comparison there. And the midpoints are all within, or anywhere from 2% above market to 6% above. Looking at the non-exempt market comparisons, particularly, specifically rather, administrative support, educational aids, and auxiliary, you will see that the comparisons are anywhere from 2% below market for auxiliary to 16% above for educational aids. For the pay comparison, but the auxiliary, if you follow the market as much as we do, you'll know that we're still in a historic unemployment rate. It hasn't been like this since the 60s, and those jobs, skilled labor jobs, are in super high demand, and so it's not out of the ordinary to be a little low in that area. That's just a very competitive market. The pay grade midpoint to market comparisons, you can see range from right at market to 21% above. And the pay grade minimums, which are key for this group because that's what you're advertising and people see and focus on quite a bit. Those are important for these non-exempt hourly jobs. And the comparisons for those minimums are anywhere from 2% below market to 17% above market. So that's what I have for this at this point. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer.
Trustees, any questions for Mr. McLemore? Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I guess we'll move on to Ms. Stambaugh and Mr. Kale.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today. Thank you, Keith, so much. Our partnership with TASB really gives us the resources that we need to be able to present this information to you this evening. So I thank you, trustees and superintendent. So we're going to do a compensation analysis and market review. And the objective today is to discover where we are right now with our teacher market salary position, our general pay increases, equity adjustments, wage compression and market analysis, TRS active care and contributions, and the summary of the total cost. So United Educators Associations each year put this together, and it's a great resource because it lets you see what Arlington ISD is doing. And you can see we are across the board from year 0 to year 30 at the very top. And so we're doing great things here at Arlington ISD. So I wanted to share this with you just to see, this has been yearly that we see ourselves on top. If we were to do a 4% teacher market raise and a 4% midpoint raise, that cost to the budget is $18,820,828. This would include a 4% market increase for teachers and a 4% midpoint raise for all other staff on our salary ranges. In addition to that, we do equity adjustments of 1% for employees that fall below range of 88%. And the reason we recommend doing that is to try to help employees get closer to midpoint a little bit faster. If we were to do a 4% teacher market raise, I wanted to point out that our starting teacher salary would be $64,600. With a 3% teacher market raise and a 3% midpoint raise, the cost is $14,519,737. This would be a 3% market increase for teachers and a 3% midpoint raise for all other employees on our salary ranges. And again, this includes the equity adjustment for employees who fall below 88% of the market at 1%. The teacher starting salary with a 3% teacher market raise would be $64,000. A 2% teacher market raise and a 2% midpoint raise, the cost is $9,894,374. This includes a 2% market increase raise for teachers and a 2% midpoint raise for all other staff on our salary ranges. And again, the 1% equity adjustment for those that fall below 88% of the market. That would put our teacher starting salary at $63,300. Some additional things to discuss is our current wage compression and market adjustments. A cost to do a wage compression adjustment for our educational aid pay scale is $2,202,430. This would be a range adjustment to align for wage compression, and a starting salary from $17 an hour to $19 per hour minimum starting salary. A $2,528,830 adjustment for our auxiliary pay scale. This is an auxiliary minimum of range adjustment and alignment for wage compression. This is $15 per hour to $16 per hour. And to touch on the wage compression, last year we made a modification to our starting salary at our auxiliary and our educational aid. When we did that, we saw that our minimum adjusted for our auxiliary from $13.25 to $15 an hour. And that was a really great thing for our pay scale. For our educational aides, it went from, I think, $15.65 an hour to $17 an hour. However, when we made that modification, we saw some wage compression with some of our employees. So these two modifications would help resolve some of that wage compression that we saw last year. In my review, we have found that our licensed specialists in school psychology, you often hear that referred to as LSSP. We see that those are below the market when we look at private sector. And so to try to recruit and retain our LSSPs, we're seeing a suggestion of doing a range adjustment from an admin pay grade 3 to an admin pay grade 6 in efforts to try to recruit and retain these positions. And that is the cost of $245,000. TRS Active Care and Contributions, Region 11 we receive a rate increase of 9.4%. TRS just recently approved these rates for the 24-25 school year. We did have some other regions that saw much larger increases, so I feel like we could have been in a worse situation. So we will see an average increase of 9.4%, and I'll touch on that on the next slide. Currently, Arlington ISD contributes $332 per employee per month for our non-exempt or paraprofessional staff. And Arlington ISD contributes $317 per employee per month for our exempt and professional staff for our medical contribution. TRS has recently reported that the national average in the private sector and public sector, the average contribution that employers are giving is $586 per month. I wanted to share that just so you could see what the national average is reporting versus what Arlington ISD is currently contributing. And also, I'd like to point out that our current loss ratio on medical and pharmaceutical claims for Arlington ISD is at 113%. Right here is our TRS active care rates for next school year. You can see the current rates and then the rates, the increase I have in red for you. These rates do not include our contribution. I just want to make sure I'm pointing that out. They do not include the contribution. One of our most common plans is our TRS Active Care HD employee only. And so for the employee only, that's a $44 a month increase. Our second most common use plan is our TRS Active Care primary employee only. And that's also going to see an increase of $44 a month. So with that, if we made an adjustment to our medical contribution at $25 per employee per month, it would be $1.4 million. We also have a wellness plan. Our goal is to continue to promote wellness in Arlington ISD, and we would like to try to promote that to the next level. That would ultimately help our claims data that I showed you briefly at 113%. If we can continue to promote wellness, we're hoping that we can see that those claims go down is our goal. And so we would also suggest a $25 per employee per month for employees to achieve what we call gold status. Right now, we do a $51 a month contribution for employees who reach silver, and so we would like to try to expand on that to continue to promote wellness, and for employees who choose to participate and achieve gold status, that would be a $25 per employee per month for that gold status, and that's $358,800, and that total would be $1,828,800. So the total cost. This includes the pay raise and the equity adjustments that I just reviewed with you, the educational aid adjustment, the auxiliary adjustment, the LSSP adjustment, and the increase to the district contribution for healthcare. So with the 4% raise and additional adjustments, that total cost is $25,625,888. For a 3% raise and the additional adjustments, it's $21,324,797. And then for a 2% raise and the additional adjustments, it's $16,699,434. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Stambaugh. Trustees, comments, questions, discussion? Ms. McMurrow.
Thank you, Ms. Stambaugh. I had a quick question. This might be one for you, Mr. Kale. I'm not sure. I'm curious about the origin of the $25 additional contribution. Where did we land on? Where did HR land on that as a recommendation? Or I wouldn't even call it a recommendation. Where did we get $25 from?
It was a best fit estimate where we were trying to work in the budget, and it was a intentional initial recommendation in regards to breaking apart the 50 total, trying to contribute toward the wellness program to continue the employee interest and drive toward healthy living, while also recognizing that some of our employees are not in the wellness program, and so it was broadening that benefit. That was the intent. No specific formula calculation per se about why it was 25 versus 35, though.
Okay, thank you. And I looking at, can we go back to the slide with the breakdown of cost increases with each TRS active care plan?
You want to see the grid, correct?
Yes, the grid, please. Thank you. So I just looking at this and thinking about our staff's monthly pay, this increase in premiums is a real hardship on staff. I want us to really think as a board about taking this in and considering the fact that about half of our, and correct me if I'm wrong, about half of our staff uses TRS Active Care. Many of our staff don't have any other choice. That is their option to support their wellness and their family's wellness. But at the same time, looking at a raise for all staff would essentially increase the pay for our staff, whether or not they are using TRS Active Care. So I've seen this floating around, and I know that many of our employees have no other choice but to opt into TRS Active Care for their health insurance. I love that we do the wellness plan, but I also acknowledge that that is additional time. Even if staff wants to opt in, it does mean time, it does mean commitment, it does mean active participation for many of our staff that is already very busy, and some of them working second jobs. And so I just want us to consider all of those things, but you called it, you anticipated this increase, and I do appreciate you guys giving us those different projections. Thank you.
If I may add very briefly, just the two kind of guideposts as we put this together, trying to follow up on your previous question. You're absolutely right. Some of our employees are in healthcare, some are not. One consideration is that once any district or any employer lets premiums kind of run away from us, it's really hard to catch up in future years if we don't keep some level of pace with the increase, with the contributions we make. And then you find yourself in a situation where years down the road, to get caught up even close, it bites so heavily into the money that might otherwise be available for raises. So that was one of the theories that we were trying to employ. And then in terms of wellness itself, you're absolutely right. It requires an additional time commitment and interest. We're just also trying to remain cognizant of the fact that a constant focus on wellness is not just good for work, it's certainly good for the individual. It's an individual choice when it comes down to it, but if we can incentivize it and we've got healthier and happier people with their families, and then they're better at work as well, it seems to benefit everybody all the way around.
Thank you, Vice President McMurrow. Ms. Richardson.
Staying on this same slide, y'all, when we're looking at almost a 10% increase, what do you attribute that to?
A couple things. So as Ms. Stambaugh pointed out, our region got a little bit of a break for some other regions now that TRS is doing regional pricing. We're higher than some other regions as well. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex tends to have higher cost of medicine because of the options and the choices and the sophistication of that care. There's a lot of embedded smaller elements into it, and I won't take you down too much of that path, but I'll give you one quick example. If you drive in Dallas-Fort Worth, which doesn't necessarily maybe exist as much in East Texas, when you drive past an urgent care center, but it says emergency room, that emergency room can bill at emergency room rates, even though practically speaking, it's much more reflective of an urgent care. And so the quality of care, the sophistication of care in Dallas-Fort Worth, the cost of living tends to drive that up. The other element is, honestly, or at least in my opinion, it is a lack of focus on wellness, and it's easy for all of us, I'll speak for myself, to let healthcare for myself kind of come last as I'm taking care of everybody else. And then at the end of the day, you find yourself in a situation where you're paying to get well instead of staying well in the first place. So I think those things combined, it's a national issue, and I'm actually glad that it came in at 9.5. I was afraid it was going to come in higher, and what I'm particularly concerned about is that it will be close to that rate, if not more, next year as well, in terms of an increase.
That is just absolutely crazy to me with how much of their salary is going towards this now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, there was an opportunity for us to leave TRS. And we chose not to do that because there was not a better alternative for our teachers.
So with legislation that was passed a few years ago, we currently have, by current statute, we have an opportunity to get out at the end of every calendar year for the subsequent plan year, which comes that next year in the summer. That we have not chosen to get out because we did not feel there was a better, stable alternative for our employees. The last thing we wanted to do was get out and into a plan or into a system that might self-destruct, and there were actually a couple of those in the market that did something similar to that. I think we made some good choices to stay in for now. Ms. Stambaugh pointed out our run rate of what we pay in premiums versus what we take out in actual claims, 112? 113%. So we're 13% above in our claims what we're actually turning in premiums to TRS. So that therefore the kind of focus on wellness of if we can start to drive some of that down.
Do you know what the average is for people who do? So if we're at 113%, what is the average?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can certainly look into it for you. I know that one of the challenges of it being over 100% is if we were to go out with that book of business to look at other alternatives, it's very unlikely, short of a introductory rate to encourage us to join something else, that we would come anywhere close to the current premiums that we have.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thank you, Secretary Richardson. Ms. Fowler.
Thank you, President Chapa. Couple of things. So if we removed ourselves from TRS, would that also mean we have to stay out for 5 years? Is that correct?
As I recall. As I
So
recall, yes, ma'am.
once you make that decision, you have to stay out for 5 years?
Yes.
Okay. And on the slide that had the 113%, do we know what kind of claims are causing us to be over the 100%? Are there certain issues? Or is it like you said with the Metroplex and the cost of medicines and things like that?
I honestly don't think it's, and just that's a really good question because it has a lot of little answers, but it is absolutely the cost of care in Dallas-Fort Worth. It is a national problem. It's not limited to Dallas-Fort Worth. It's not limited to Arlington ISD. And there's just a variety of different conditions. I will tell you that I'm happy to say I do not have access to people's individual claims. Sometimes I think there's a perception that HR sees everybody's health care, and that's just not true. I'm very happy to say that is not the case. And so, unfortunately, though, I can't tell you that level of detail. I can tell you on average, historically, professionally, what I've learned over years is that there are often big drivers that cost much more than anything else. There's a difference. Those things when we go to get healthcare checkups, those really are not very expensive. But the things that get out of control over time that turn into cancers, that turn into heart conditions, those things cost a lot of money. Not all of them are avoidable. Some of them are genetic, but some of them are avoidable. And those are the things, both for the sake of the individual employee as well as the cost of the plan, we want to try and be proactive about.
Thank you. And I do think with everything going up, we do need to contribute as much as we can, because I know with teachers, they get a raise, but then their health care almost eats up that raise.
Right.
And so we need to try and figure out how we can help them the best way we can, whether it be through, a pay increase and or helping with their TRS. I think we need to do that. They deserve it.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you
Fowler.
both.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Do we have any other trustees with comments, questions, discussion? Nope. Dr. Smith?
So trustees, we presented two presentations to you tonight. Ms. Moss gave you an initial review of the budget outlook for the coming year. Again, I want to be clear that is draft budget. Those numbers will change, and you all know that, but those numbers did not include any pay raises at this point. We then had a second presentation from our HR team and TASB that gave you an overview of market data and how we're compensating our staff, with also options for you to consider.
And our ask is, as a board, that you consider those options. We're going to have to land on that in the month of June. And obviously, you have multiple things that we can do regarding compensation and/or benefit contributions. So the purpose of tonight was to really provide you this initial information, let you contemplate things, and as we come back together in early June, we're going to have to make some decisions on that.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I had a couple quick questions, Mr. Kale. On the slide that shows TR active, it's a slide that has the 113% loss ratio. That slide. I had a question on, so the TRS, we in the past have looked at, there's been sort of a comparison chart, not exactly like the UEA salary schedule that we saw, but it's similar to it. So the 332 and 317 numbers that are on here, is that with the wellness plan?
Yes. Yes.
And where does that put us in the sort of comparison districts that we compare ourselves to? Are we in the top like 5, top 10?
So I'll let Ms. Stanbaugh nod over my shoulder, but I believe I'm correct. It puts us about in the middle. We're right at about the median in terms of our comparative districts.
Okay, do we know where that sort of tops out at?
I do not know offhand. I don't want to misquote it for you.
Okay, and then on the 113% loss ratio, you've mentioned this before in prior years, and I feel like at one point in the not too distant past, we were at maybe like 106% or close to that. So we've continued to trend upward pretty sharply.
We are trending upward in our percentage of claims ratios, yes, sir.
Okay. And so I share Ms. Fowler's concern about, and I think everybody up here shares it, on we've got these big increases in healthcare premiums. I mean, people are seeing this in the public and private sector. And I think the real question for me is, what do I feel more comfortable putting that additional $1.8 million? And so I think where I'm at today, I do like the increase for the wellness program. I've been on wellness programs at prior employers. I know sometimes they're a little bit of a pain, but we were the district that led out on lobbying to get districts the choice to be able to exit TRS active care several years ago. That was sort of a pet project that started the pet project with Mr. Hogg when he was on the board. Yeah. And we've talked about this before here, where we all went down to the state legislature and we brought you along and had you talk to legislators and you're like, listen to this guy. And we had a draft bill that was dropped that would have allowed a pilot program for Arlington ISD to exit TRS active care. And at the time, we thought that would be a really great deal for us. And we didn't get that bill passed, but what it led to was discussions with the state, with TRS. The legislators basically called up TRS and said, you need to meet with Arlington and y'all need to figure something out. And you did. And what came out of that, and a lot of credit to you and your staff, is that in a way led to the regional pricing scheme that TRS has now. And so we have been leading on this issue, but at the same time we've been doing that and we finally got the opportunity to get out, we have put ourselves in a position where we, as a commodity going out on the market with our, shopping around to healthcare providers, where we thought that was going to be a great deal maybe 5 years ago, we're not going to be able to see those rates, and we're not going to be able to take advantage of the choice that we fought for if our cost ratio continues to go up.
Right.
And when you're dealing with folks, and I kind of got this from what you said, when you're dealing with folks in healthcare, you're sort of pushing at the margins and you're trying to get things towards a better outcome, but you can't directly do it. And there has been a historical, I think, reluctance on our part to put too much of an incentive into the wellness plan. But for folks who are on the wellness plan, there's a sizable increase in the insurance premium subsidy. This would propose to take it even higher.
Right.
But I think the important thing to emphasize here is we're not, it's important that people are healthy, and it's important that, healthier folks tend to be happier folks and better employees and so on. We get all that, but also at the end of the day, we're trying to get our employees in a position to where we can help ourselves get our cost ratio down, so we can get out of TRS, go onto the market, and get lower healthcare insurance premiums to begin with in the first instance, and that's the ultimate goal. So I think the proposal to increase the wellness program subsidy, I totally agree with that. Where I struggle a little bit more is with the proposal to do the 25% kicker into the premium subsidy on the healthcare, not because I think there's always going to be the folks who sort of say, well, $25 a month, like that's not that big of a deal. Any little bit helps, especially when you're seeing premium increases like this. The thing that historically has been important for me as a talking point on this is that we are sort of at market median, and I may be wrong on this, but my understanding is that portion that we subsidize the insurance premium if we do not, employees do not get retirement credit for that, correct?
I think that's correct. Yes.
And so I think Ms. McMurrow sort of highlighted this earlier, that's sort of a thing to consider is whether or not the almost 1.5 that would go towards increasing the insurance premium subsidy, are we better off rolling that into a general pay raise for all employees that will also hit so we have some employees that are on the healthcare plan. We have a big chunk of employees who are not. It's almost half. And, do we focus on that 1.5 million on these folks, or do we spread it out across all the folks? And the folks who are on the healthcare plan still get some relief, but it's also relief that is creditable towards their TRS retirement.
I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak to this briefly. I think we're at a crossroads in terms of strategy, and nobody likes change. Change is painful no matter what the subject is. And healthcare is personal. So you put all that together, and crossroads are difficult decisions. The crossroad I'm referring to is, how much do we want to say we're all in on this wellness idea, that it doesn't cost any money to get well if you didn't get sick in the first place? How much are we in? Because that requires some change. And whether it's $25 toward more wellness, or whether it's $50 or whatever the case, how much are we going to decide to move that direction as opposed to the general increase? Because the general increase, if we kind of hold our ground of where we've been, keeps us from getting run away on the overall cost. So 2 years from now, we say, wait a minute, we're so far behind market, we're not at median anymore. Now we're at the bottom of the distribution. And how do we catch up? And it's very expensive, and then it's a problem that's very difficult to solve. And if we don't commit one way or the other, I'm afraid that will happen. What I really haven't elaborated on in terms of the wellness program contribution is that to date, and this comes with change, right? A few years ago, we didn't have wellness. Nobody was used to it. It was a big difference for everybody. And is it just some placeholder thing that HR is doing, or is it something that is real and helps us? And what we did was we implemented an incentive of $51 a month just to be aware, just to drive awareness. And because to get that $51 a month, you effectively have to do a biometric screening and a healthcare questionnaire and a few activities. And what that drives is, oops, Scott's cholesterol's too high, or the blood pressure's too high, or I have this issue or that issue, but it doesn't require me to make any change. And that change is what will not only be good for employees personally, but it will also be the factor that will drive costs down over a period of time. And so what we're actually recommending, in whatever amount that the board might consider to put into wellness, is that higher tier is not just a color code system of gold or silver. It's a much higher standard that says you have to do something now. So I go to my doctor, he tells me I have these issues. Before that took care of it, I got my incentive. What we're proposing is that lower threshold payout remains the same, it's unchanged, but anything addition we put in requires I now have to, through my doctor and through this third party where HR will never know about it, I have to do something about it. So my doctor signs off that Scott did something about it. Not necessarily that the outcome was completely successful, but there was action taken. We haven't done that yet, and until we decide to do that, which is change, which comes with some frustration sometimes, we probably won't reach the end objective, which is to drive down those costs, which is where we all want to be.
So to I think clarify, that's very helpful for me, because I'm kind of open on this and on which direction I want to ultimately end up. So I understand to be recommending that this 1.5, that you think it should stay in healthcare, it shouldn't go towards a general salary increase because we're at the crossroads. And whether we do 25 towards just a general premium subsidy and 25 towards the wellness, right? I almost hear you saying maybe we could put an even different amount towards the wellness.
The more that we make a conscious commitment to say this is what we're doing and we have a good reason for it,
yeah,
we're trying to help the employees individually and we're trying to help the plan in that order, the more that's put toward wellness, the more that has the potential to achieve that outcome.
Okay, and to be clear, because we understand this, and I don't know if everybody listening does, but when we're talking about the increase in wellness, folks who are on the wellness plan get a greater healthcare premium subsidy than folks who don't.
They do a $51 a month more, and any change we would recommend leave the 51 at the current standard, complete those two things that I talked about. But now there's a different standard as well. Now act on it through your doctor, and then there's whatever additional incentive that was approved by the board would apply on top of that.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you giving us your thoughts on that, because I take them very seriously.
Thank you.
That's all I have. If there's no other comments or questions, thank you, Mr. Kell, Ms. Stambaugh.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Thank you.
McLemore, thank you for coming down. Okay, with that, we will move on to our consent agenda items tonight. The consent agenda is our portion of the meeting where we consider routine items all at once without discussion. Trustees, does anyone have an item that they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? I have a motion from Secretary Richardson. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Ms. Fowler. We will move on to vote. Trustees have unanimously approved, 7-0. The consent agenda passes. We'll now move on to our open forum for non-agenda items. Ms. Forsberg, do we have any requesters registered to address the board regarding non-agenda items?
Yes, President Chapa, we have 3 requested.
Thank you, Ms. Forsberg. So this is the second open forum for our meeting tonight. This forum provides citizens with the opportunity to address the trustees on any subject except personnel. It's not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Ms. Forsberg will notify you when your time is up. You'll also have a color-coded light here on the podium. The first speaker that we have registered for tonight is Mandy Boyd. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. You may begin.
Good evening. I know this is a long night, so thank you for allowing us to talk tonight. Good evening. My name is Mandy Boyd. I'm a graduate of AISD, a parent of 2 kids in the district, but tonight I come to you as a concerned teacher. I'm a teacher of students with visual impairments in our district. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Vision team regarding our position and appropriate compensation. As a team, with our supervisor's guidance, we've requested a supplemental pay stipend for our critically needed specialized work for several years. We have yet to receive any communication or response on our request for a stipend. So to become a teacher of students with visual impairments, you must have several years of experience as a classroom teacher, take 24 hours of graduate level coursework to attain the required certification. That process also involves passing 2 certification exams, including an incredibly rigorous Braille, reading, writing, and transcribing exam. And then you must also complete a year-long internship. So as Vision teachers, we travel to multiple campuses a day. We teach students with a specialized curriculum, write IEP documents, attend ARD meetings, complete thorough evaluations, which can take up to 10 hours each to determine if a student qualifies for Vision services. Our work is highly specialized and requires a specific set of skills. Arlington ISD also has one of the highest populations of students with visual impairments in our region. About 70 students total from birth to 22 years old, 7 of which of those are actually Braille readers. The number of students with visual impairments is growing, and it is critical to find and retain certified teachers of the visually impaired. Our department consists of 6 Vision teachers, but with 2 of them leaving the department at the end of this school year, which is like next week, our team will be even more short-staffed. One departing teacher cited just the lack of supplemental pay as a reason for choosing to work in a neighboring district. Although AISD offers a stipend for many other specialized staff, including deaf education teachers, alt-curric teachers, and things like that, there's no stipend for the Vision staff. Many surrounding districts offer a stipend for their Vision teachers, ranging from $1,500 to $5,000 per year. So we bring this to your attention not for selfish reasons, but because our team loves working for and advocating for this unique population of students. Our department is concerned that we will not be able to provide the services that these students need, they deserve, and are legally required to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Our next speaker on the list is Colin Weatherwax. Good evening. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, As a concerned father, I stand before you today to advocate for the essential need of Braillists in our schools for visually impaired children. I'm here not only for her, but for all the children who deserve equal access to education. My daughter is one of the smartest people I know and deserves the proper education so that she can become a working member of our society. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to navigate a world where every piece of information, every lesson, every test is presented in a format you cannot see. This is the reality for children like my daughter. Despite her incredible resilience and determination, she faces barriers every day that prevent her from fully engaging in her education. The role of a Braillist is crucial in bridging this gap. A Braillist is trained to transcribe written materials into Braille, ensuring that visually impaired students have access to the same information as their sighted peers. They are not just transcribers, they are educators who understand the complexities of Braille and the importance of adapting materials to meet the individual needs of each student. Without a Braillist, visually impaired students are often forced to rely on incomplete or inaccurate materials, hindering their ability to learn and succeed academically. This is not only unfair, it is a violation of their right to an inclusive education. I urge you to consider the impact that the Braillists can have on the lives of visually impaired students in our district. By providing this crucial support, we are not only meeting our legal obligations under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, but we are also fulfilling our moral obligation to ensure that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential. Mr. Chapa, I know what this means to you based on your experience with the Youth and Education Law Project you participated in at Stanford. I would not be where I am today without the work and patience of the teachers that taught me throughout my school years. I could not imagine what my life would be without the guidance and support of those teachers. My daughter is just looking for the same. Let us not allow our children to be held back by the lack of a Braillist. Let us instead empower them to succeed by providing the support they need to thrive, for they are just as important as any other student, not only in this district, but in the world. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our last speaker for this evening is Valerie Yanaros. And I would ask if you have materials to hand out to the board that you please hand them to the officer over there. Thank you. Good evening. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chapa, members of the board. I'm here also as a concerned parent. My daughter is 7 years old and she's visually impaired. What we're handing around are some examples of what she does on a day-to-day basis. Schoolwork that she does in a regular classroom, but that has to be brailled by people that have certain skills that know how to speak and write a different language. When she was born and we found out that she was going to be visually impaired, we lived in Fort Worth. We did the research to see where we could go and move to find the best education for her. I'm also an attorney and a litigator. I've represented schools and I've been opposite schools. I was opposite a school down in South Texas called Far San Juan Alamo. And one of the most incredible attorneys I've ever been opposite came to me before our first hearing opposite each other. And she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, I don't mean to freak you out. So I was immediately freaked out. And she said, but I've looked at your Facebook. Kennedy, my daughter, was about 7 months old at that point in time. And she said, I don't know if you know this, but I'm blind. And she proceeded to tell me that she grew up in San Antonio and the schools that she went to did not understand what her disability was, and they thought she was just clumsy. She moved up to Arlington and found out that she had rods and cones disease and that her vision was the reason for some of the things that held her back. She stayed at ISD, she graduated from AISD, and she advocated for me to move here with my family so that my daughter could get the best education that she could get, and that's why we're here. But as Ms. Boyd and my husband, Mr. Weatherwax, said, we're losing that. I do know through the litigations that I've done, both on behalf of schools and against schools, that the school districts get paid more for kids with special needs than they do for kids without special needs. So we need to pay the teachers more. We don't have any more Braillists for next year. So that means my daughter can't read what the school is going to give to her. So we have to do something. And I think it goes without saying that under the IDEA Act, this is something that is statutorily required. And so we just hope that the board can do something to fix this. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, we wouldn't have any questions for non-agenda, and I'm sorry about that, but we're happy to talk to you offline, and you can email or talk to trustees after the meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll now move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Smith.
Yes, trustees, tonight I'd like to share some information about exciting news that's happening in our district in my superintendent's report. As I've mentioned a few times in a few different speeches, we had a great event recently with our Star Luncheon. The Star Luncheon is an annual event that honors our top 2% of seniors at our high schools and a teacher who impacted them the most. Days like yesterday reinforce all of the great things we do in Arlington ISD to prepare students for life after our halls and walls. More proof that we're in event season happened last week when we honored our retirees and district employees who have reached milestones in years of service. We invited over 250 employees to the dinner and thanked them for 25, 30, 35, and 40 years of service. We even have one teacher, Diane Brewer at Turning Point, who has been with the district for 50 years. We also honored the nearly 100 employees who have retired or who are retiring this year. And while we're in the event portion of the superintendent's report, we honored participants in 8 of our Aspire leadership programs earlier this week. These are employees in our system who consciously pursue bettering them, learning together, growing together, and trying to take a next step in their professional learning. And we are excited to honor them as well. Seeing so many district leaders follow their path toward an expanded leadership role in our district was great. Do you want one more event? Sure you do. Our district recently held its annual signing day celebration at our athletic center. We used to have this in February, but moved it to later in the year because so many of our student athletes hadn't made their decisions in February. It's a move that's paid off too, as we honored more than 100 Arlington ISD student athletes who earned more than $6 million in scholarship money. I want to commend Alicia Rodriguez and the staff at Thornton Elementary for coming up with a new spelling bee for students, one done in Spanish. Because the school has so many Spanish English learners, it wanted to represent them with a B, and 22 spellers made it to the big stage. Congratulations to 4th grader Aiden Rodriguez for his win. And remember, the students had to spell the words by saying the letters in Spanish and correctly adding all the accents to the letters. One last congrats to Arlington High teacher Blay Hansard. As a part of the Teacher Appreciation Week, North Texas Honda dealers do random acts of helpfulness for teachers. Hansard, who teaches engineering and aviation classes on drones, was surprised with $5,000 worth of goodies that he can use in his classroom. This concludes my report for this meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We'll move on to school board reports. Do we have trustees with reports for this past few weeks? Secretary Richardson.
It's been a busy 2 weeks since we saw each other last. It's been really busy. One of the big events that we had going on was Bless the Campus that we talked about before with the Council of PTAs. They served over 41 schools this year. We had an amazing donation of over 3,500 boxes of Girl Scout cookies were donated by the Girl Scout Service Unit 206 and Oklahoma Plains. That means every teacher that they serviced was able to take home a box of cookies with them, along with all the other treats. They also raised over $5,300 in donations from locals who would contribute to this to make sure it would happen. What this means is that there are schools that don't have PTAs or organizations to celebrate them during Teacher Appreciation Week. So our Council of PTAs steps in and makes sure that all of those all those schools are recognized, and those teachers get to be loved on a little bit. The second thing we had the FFA banquet recognitions awards. Tanner Smith leads this. Trustee Haynes knows way more about this than I do, but he is amazing. And we were able to go and sit and watch. This is student-led. There are over 945,988 members, 9,163 chapters, over 50 states that include Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. These students were able to get awards in LDE, CDE, SDE, stock shows, volunteer work, and their academics, but the entire program was student-led. There were no adults helping them. It was amazing. This week, I was invited to go read at West Elementary by instructional coach Jessica Huddleston. Bearded Dragon, my friend, went to go read Dragons Love Tacos. Cream Puff is also a bearded dragon. And so we got to go read to these kids, and they were super excited. And we were thrilled to be invited to go read at West Elementary. Last but not least, Tina Phelps is retiring after 41 years with the district. She did 31 years at Sherrod Elementary and was surprised by former students that had come back to love on her. She did her last few years at Corey Fine Arts and Dual Language Academy, but Tina has done over 41 years in AISD. Last, we had fun today. I was invited to go to West Elementary by Principal Amber Cannon, and we had a race today. And it wasn't really a race, it was more of a parade, but I have a small video I wanted to show you guys. It was an inflatable parade. All the teachers dressed up, and I got to be the dinosaur. I even brought my own, but we marched up and down the hallways, got to be cheered on by the kids. That school knows how to have fun. They are making the most out of their last 2 weeks of school. So if you ever want to go do something fun, go see West Elementary, go see Principal Amber Cannon. They know how to end the end of the year right.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. I have a report from Vice President McMorrow.
Thank you, President Chapa. I wanted to commend Martin High School for their spring musical of Grease, and I believe that Arlington High put on an outstanding performance of Legally Blonde, and rave reviews for all performances. And I just want to commend, I don't want to just say theater because it's way more than just our theater teachers. It's in the pit, it's orchestra, it's band, it's choir, and that's just the fine arts side of things. So I want to commend all of our educators, students, and of course parents, because it's a big sacrifice on the parents' part, that made this come together. It's so fun to see our students shine on stage, and I just wanted to applaud them for their awesome performances this past week. I also wanted to say thank you to Melody Fowler. Melody, you were an awesome board president. It cannot be overstated how much your leadership changed our district and really gave us a steady hand during not just one, but two superintendent searches that equated to about a year. And we landed with the absolute best superintendent, and we couldn't have done it without you at the helm. Melody, you stayed cool when things got hot, real hot. And I appreciate that about you. You see the best in each of us, and I hope that you can applaud yourself tonight and reflect upon your tenure as president and see the best in yourself too. You listen more than you spoke. You seek to understand than to be understood. And I really just want to commend you for your leadership and the way that you love on your board. And I don't think, we all love Arlington ISD, but I don't think there is any bigger fangirl for AISD, all things Arlington ISD, than Melody Fowler. So well done, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. McMorrow. Ms. Haynes?
Yes, thank you. So before we left this evening, I just wanted to recognize that it is Food Allergy Awareness Week. And before the meeting ended, I wanted to make sure that I recognized and gave credit to the students that are going to school every day with food allergies, to the teachers and the cafeteria workers and the support staff that are ensuring that they are safe at school, that they are included in activities, that they are seen and loved on, and that they're taken care of. And to the food allergy families that are sending their children to school every day, I want you to know that you are supported and you're seen, and you have a district of employees behind you that are working hard to keep your children safe. So,
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Any other trustees with reports this evening? All right, seeing none, it is 9:17 and this meeting is adjourned.